Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you're having a great 2015. This is the year of the sheep or the goat, depending on your perspective. But we don't think that you should be necessarily looking at following the same path on the pasture there with InfoPath, although there are lots of pastures there left. And anyway, we've got a great show for you this morning. I want to welcome you. Quick discussion, no major demos today. We do have a lot of really exciting demos coming up for you in the next 4 weeks. We've just updated our webinar schedule. We did 36 webinars last year, and we hope to do at least that many this year. So I'm recording, and I'll get this up on YouTube later, but just a quick rundown of our show today. Want to quickly go through who we are. Some of you haven't, some of you we know and love, and some of you don't know us, and we want to just do a quick kind of a couple slides here from your sponsor, advertising what we do, how long we've been here, give you an idea of who we are and what we do. And then I'll talk about our New Year's resolutions, and that includes shipping certain products that some of you may be looking forward to. We'll also talk about top features that we get requested to do when we're doing forms with SharePoint, and not just InfoPath, but also list forms and access forms and things like that. We do have a number of features, and I'll go through what I think the top features are, different kinds of forms, and how do you scope a project based on certain key characteristics of the form that you're building. And then we'll have some Q&A and talk about the upcoming webinars. So just one more audio check here, because I am the only one this morning talking with you. Let's see if we could get another show of hands to let me know that the audio is coming through loud and clear. That would be great. And thanks a lot, Sandra. I appreciate that. Okay, so without any further ado, feel free to also post your questions early. That way you'll be first in line when I get to them. Who are we? Well, we're a small bootstrap business in Seattle. That means we have no debt. We're not VC funded. I founded the company in 2003 with a couple other guys. Actually, most of them, we were from Microsoft, and we still have a couple people from Microsoft, including myself. We left Microsoft because we thought there was a huge opportunity with InfoPath when it was announced, released, to help evangelize it and help Microsoft sell it. Microsoft's typically a great engineering company, not so much on the marketing side. Although people get those confused. Sometimes you think it's marketing, but not really. It's actually, Microsoft's a good engineering company first. Anyway, we're experts in software, getting stuff done. We develop lots of things, apps for our customers. About 50% of our consulting business, which is a piece of the business, is InfoPath projects still. In fact, we saw a big uptick at the end of last year. People got tired of waiting for Microsoft to announce a new path. So we've seen a huge uptick in people putting projects on us, and we also build tools and things to accelerate those projects so that you can quickly get done with less costs. And these are common libraries like QRules. We have a web service suite called DBExcel, and we have an app now for viewing forms in SharePoint 2013 that we hope to provide as a backup option for people who are worried about InfoPath support in the future. Everything's fine now. So we do training and support, of course, and lots of customers here. Last point I want to make is that we are technology agnostic. And if you look at our website, you'll see that we've updated the website last year. We tried to make this a little less InfoPathy, and we've added, because we do a lot of SharePoint work. We do SharePoint analysis, we do list forms, we do access forms, we do solutions that aren't even Microsoft. We do .NET, of course, but we also do JavaScript, PHP, and other things like that. So once again, this is the ad, right? We created the company. I created the company with this idea of a virtuous cycle. You know, put a lot of effort and goodwill and outreach into the community, and eventually you'll get people who want to work with you. We get consulting projects, and you'll find gaps in the technology. You'll build tools to fill those gaps, which will enhance and feedback positively to your consulting projects and also to the community. And then eventually, you know, those tools will become larger, and they'll have a service piece, a back-end piece, and then we'll have partners that help us to get the word out. So we're a little different than most companies. We're totally virtual. We've been virtual since day one. We really pride ourselves on responsive service, and that means typically same-day response, if not better. And of course, we're here to help you. It's not about any specific technology. It's about trying to get your job done faster. And we like to think that we provide a really good value proposition. We have some excellent resources here, very experienced individuals who've been in this industry for 10, 20 years, and a lot of new young people who have lots of energy and smarts. And like I said, we are lower cost than most consulting companies out there, mainly because we're virtual. We have people in Asia. We have a team in Manila and in Japan that we use to offload work to, so we can go around the clock, around the globe. And we're really interested in that longer-term relationship with you. Regardless of the path that you choose to move down, we're here to solve your problems, and that's what we're good at. We have 3 websites. We just released FormsQuo last year. This is our new website. We need to refresh it. This is where we're trying to help people plan their future in the midst of this fumble from Microsoft with regards to the InfoPath future plans. So we're trying to help people understand what the options are out there, and help you figure out what to do if you get some kind of a directive from people that says you have to move to some other new technology. We're here to help you identify what that might be and help you move the data over. Of course, Qdabra.com is our website, and then we have their community forum, InfoPath Dev. So this year is all about simplification and multiplication. Simplify, multiply at Qdabra. I have this picture of this wonderful Fibonacci sequence here, which is actually the sunflower seed pattern is a Fibonacci sequence. It's cool. So the seed is really planting the seed for the future, and I like the pattern there. What does it really mean? Well, it means that we want to simplify the forms that we build. We've always been trying to follow best practices, just kind of re-emphasizing that. When we build a simple form, it means it's auto-populating. It doesn't have 200 fields. I'll talk more about scope in a second in terms of form size. And that's good because it's got better browser performance, easier to migrate your data to some other technology down the road, or to keep it in InfoPath, and it's fast. And of course, on the multiply front, it's kind of a goofy little moniker for this year, but we are trying to help customers reduce make it easier to manage the forms by breaking them up, organize the data better. And it's all about the data in the end, right? And that's where InfoPath really shines, is in its structure to enable you to structure data in a repeating way, to normalize the data so that you don't have these long lists of hundreds or 200s of fields like you do with list forms. So we have some ship resolutions this year. Specifically, we're trying to get Forms Viewer 1.1 out. Some of you may recall that we last shipped Forms Viewer in July of last year. We hoped to get out at the end of the year. A lot of stuff came in at the end of the year, so we put consulting above product shipping, and we delayed it a couple months, but we are completely committed to getting this out. The new version has a bunch of new features. It's got SharePoint list filtering out of the box. It's got file attachments. We're trying to round out all the features so we cover everything that InfoPath has. Oh great, so it's got a question there. Thank you very much. I'll come to that in a second. And in 1.2, we're going to be releasing two or three more versions this year. So this is our main focus in terms of product this year. Forms Viewer app, which allows you to install on SharePoint 2013 or 365, and you can view and edit your InfoPath forms without InfoPath. So if, for whatever reason, if Microsoft breaks InfoPath again, like they did last May, and you're out and you're wondering, like, well, I got a process, I got a showstopper, I got a blocking issue, and Microsoft support isn't helping me, you could install this app, get it up and running, and just point it at the old form library, and guess what? Everything will work just fine. In fact, we're baking in QRules functionality, so it's going to be more than just InfoPath, but it uses the InfoPath design as the format. So you don't have to do anything with your existing forms. We have customers on this already, and we have some very excited customers are asking us, where's the community? Where do I go? FormsViewer app is free. We hope to make money by providing consulting services to help you. It comes with this back-end piece called Form Services, which you need to run, to take apart the XSN and do all the other stuff behind the scenes. We have a public version out there that people can use. It's thresholded at a certain amount of usage. But though it's open source, so we could help you install that on your Azure service, your Azure server, and get that up and running. And that will be released at the same schedule as FormsViewer, and we're going to be adding functions to that. You can think of that as InfoPath Form Services. It's our equivalent. It's all code we wrote, of course. We went to Microsoft and we asked them if they want us to take on their code base, and they said, well, it's too complicated because it's integrated with Office, Microsoft Office stuff, and so they said no, but we're doing it anyway, and we've been doing it for over a year now, providing leadership there for you, so you have a path forward with your investment. We also have two very popular products, QRules, which is our common library plugin, over 160 different commands, and we tried to get this out last year too. Didn't quite make it. A lot of new commands, actually a lot of updates to commands, and then a new take on the send email command. There's over 160, like I said, and a lot of people use QRules to do things that you can't do out of the box in InfoPath that require code. So we've written the code for you. It's there. We're probably going to be making that open source this year as well. We have a big open source push. Database Accelerator, this is our flagship web services suite. There's actually about 10 different web services here. We've had this out there in production for almost 10 years now, and very happy to announce that we're releasing this again. We've got some updates for 2013, a lot of reporting tool updates, a lot of bug fixes. Event Receiver handles deletes now, and you can get all this information in our September newsletter. In that link there, we are going to be announcing another newsletter here shortly. Thanks for your patience here while I go through the ads. So for 2014, our highlights were we hired some awesome people. We're still a small team here, but we hired 3 awesome women, and really happy that they came on board. We also shipped FormsViewer beta in version 1. We tried to lead you, the community, through the vacuum, this fumble where Microsoft did not announce what the next technology is. They did in March, right? They said Forms on SharePoint lists at the conference, and then they proceeded to not do anything. Actually, they did a lot, and then they canceled the project. They didn't tell anybody about it, and showed a lack of accountability in November when they kind of sneakishly said that they were going to redo it from scratch because of the lack of mobile support. And I gave them a piece of my mind on that. But anyway, suffice to say, they're probably going to ship InfoPath again, which means the sunset date will be 2024, 2025. And anyway, it's still going to be used for a very long time. Microsoft is still developing InfoPath solutions. We're doing it for them. So we've got 3 active InfoPath projects on 2010 and 1 on 2013 at Microsoft. Most of the team at Microsoft has moved to the cloud, but they're still internally on 2010. So we did increase our consulting sales and our DBXL sales as well. Just some tidbits on what we've done last year. Here's our team of 11 people. We're growing. We're trying to add 2 or 3 more people this year. If you know anybody who wants to work virtually, and let me know. We actually have 2 open positions right now, and just send email to support@qdabra.com, or you can send email to me, whatever. Anyway, so let's talk about forms and features. So when I did this last night, I just kind of top of the head, I want to talk about something today, and I just said, well, what are the top kinds of forms that we see out there? And so I started off saying, well, of course, leave requests, timesheet, surveys, and so on. But then I decided, well, maybe what I should do is make it a little bit more abstract, because really, if we think about leave requests, they're just a kind of request. So you get forms that are requests. People have new employee requests, new equipment requests, time off requests, and many different kinds of requests. And they're typically really simple forms with an approval piece to them. So that's kind of like one big category of forms, right? List forms. You may not think of them as list forms because they're not actually in SharePoint list forms, but they're InfoPath list forms. But what they are is they're forms with repeating structures. So they're surveys that have questions that change, or they're performance reviews where they have different criteria for different job responsibilities, or they might be some kind of a checklist that you fill out to make sure that the patient has has got all the vital signs or whatever it is, right? So that's another huge category of forms. And then we have like the data logging forms, like timesheets, support tickets, customer info. Whenever you get a new like when you're doing clinical trials, you're going to go out there and test the reaction of some drug, right? You're going to get some information from the patient. Those are data logging types of forms. And then we also see things like dashboards. People actually use InfoPath not to submit data, but to display data on SharePoint, because SharePoint Designer, it's HTML-y, which is great, but it requires that you know HTML, and there's it was visual up until 2010, and then they took out the visual piece in 2013. Well, InfoPath is still visual, so you can create web pages with InfoPath and just display the contents of a list or multiple lists. You can mash them up, and then you can color them to make them heat mappy. Make them, here's the hot potato, folks. You got to pick up the ball, or to have a scorecard where you have calculations, right? You can do this all very simply using InfoPath rules and logic. And of course, you could have a form that searches a very large list instead of having to display everything in the default SharePoint paging, right? And now SharePoint has that search bar at the top, but you could still do something a little more complicated, like say, look, I want to search for these 3 different fields, or I want to search for something that is not an exact match. You could use a dashboard to do that. So those are just some ideas that came top of my head, right? There's probably others. If you have other ideas, other categories I missed, please put those in chat so I can give you credit here at the end and talk about those. So then when we talk about features for forms, repeating data is a huge one. In fact, I'd say 95% of all forms have some kind of repeating data. And why is that? Well, it's because you want to normalize your data source. Because if you have everything in a big list, guess what? It's hard to modify. It's hard to edit, to repurpose, because you have to add another item, another column to the list. With the repeating structure, you can make it data-driven. And so actually, if you look in the real world, paper forms actually have repeating data. And 95% of them have repeating data. I mean, there are some very simple forms that don't have repeating data, but the majority of them, business forms, actually do. And then the majority of electronic forms, of course, are going to be querying some SharePoint source, some external REST web service, or something out there to auto-populate, to reduce the time it takes the users to fill out the form. The form itself has headers and footers and sections and tabs. The UI is typically broken out into those kinds of pieces, and those are very common pieces, and so views are a very common feature. Obviously, you need a view, so it's not common, it's essential. And almost all InfoPath forms today have rich validation. This is something you don't find in Access web apps yet. You can, of course, modify a SharePoint list form using InfoPath to add validation, but out of the box, you're not going to get that unless you click on Customize with InfoPath. And that includes show hide, that includes conditional formatting, that includes rules that set values based on other values. So it's very, very rich. And finally, I think workflow needs to be mentioned. People are always have buttons in their forms to save and submit, approve, reject, and the forms need to send email or create a PDF on the back end. So these are some of the very common things that we do when we create forms. And so what I've done with this next slide, feel free to ask a question if you have one, and I'll get to it in a second. I'm almost done here. I've got a few more slides. I put in here this small, medium, large, and XL here, like shirt sizes, right? So when I look at a project, someone comes to us and say, hey, I want you guys to create a form. I say, well, how many fields do you have? Now look at a paper form, or we just talk about it. If it's less than 50 fields, it's a small form. You know, and you can see here how I've done this. I just did this kind of off the top of my head, I got a mathematics major back a long time ago, but this is kind of how I do things, and it's completely, I've come up with this technique of estimating it just organically, just over trial and error here. But typically a small form will have one or two views. It'll have, several data connections. It'll have logic. And by the way, if you're wondering how many rules are in your form, you can go into the rule inspector and you can count them, or you can go into the manifest file, export your source files in your form template and look at the XSF form at the very bottom are the rules, and you can just count them up. It's hard to find this, though, if you do that way. So I just like to go into the rule inspector and count pages. And these aren't pages, these are numbers of rules. But you get the same idea. It's about 1 page of rules, about 2 pages of rules, and so on. We have customers that come to us, they've got, literally the rule inspector doesn't even come up after about a minute. So I had a customer a couple weeks ago who came to me and they showed me a large form, 25 views. It had literally 2,000 fields. And it took 10 minutes before the rule inspector, and I just gave up. Actually, I didn't. I gave up, and then I came back to it and realized it had opened. And this is bad, and this is wrong. And here, underneath this line item here, I've added some action items that you need to take if you see your form going beyond this limit, this 400. Because Excel, that's it. Don't go beyond it, right? You need to normalize your fields or break up your form. If you've got more than 20 views, you've done something wrong, you've got kitchen sink syndrome, and everything's in the kitchen sink, don't do that. If you've got more than 25 data connections, you need to consolidate them. You can use one data connection for multiple queries. Don't forget that. And then for logic, if you've got more than like about 100 or 150 rules, you've got a problem. You need to normalize your rules just like you normalize your data by creating a hub where all the rules go through. With workflow tends to be much more complicated because of the fan out of testing, test matrix, and so on. So simple forms have no workflow. If you've got workflow, it's going to cost more money and more time. And so, if you've got beyond, let's say 30 different states, and what's a state? A state's like starts a state, ends a state, right? So every form has 2, you could say, but I'm excluding those from this count. So if you have a submitted state, then you have an approval state, then you've got 2 states, right? So somebody submits a form, it's now submitted. Somebody has to approve it, right? So somebody goes in there and approves it. Now it's approved. Maybe you have a archive state, 3 states. Very simple workflow. That's medium, right? That's 3, because we're removing start and end. But we do see people with very complex workflows. For those, you're going to want a server-based solution. So something like SharePoint workflows or Nintex or K2. If you go, and also keep in mind that this is for form-based workflow. So we do our workflows mainly in the form because it's simple. It's right there where they can see it. They can click on the button. They don't have to go to SharePoint to approve it. But most of the time you're going to be using server-based workflow to do notifications or move data around, or for these large things. So when I cost out solutions, I look at this kind of a matrix here. So small being 20 to 40 hours, medium, and you may ask yourself, well, wait a minute, Patrick, what about if I got 50 fields, but I got 10 views? Well, typically that doesn't happen. Typically these kind of parallel one another, and you don't even have to ask these other questions. You can just ask them how many fields they have. Well, but you probably want to look at how big the form is too, because you can't have forms that have 2,000 fields but only have a few pages, and vice versa. In those cases, you just pick the one that's larger. Yeah, that doesn't quite work out like that, but you get the idea. And this is kind of how we cost things out. Most forms that we do are in the $2,000 range. Sometimes they're a little bit cheaper. Sometimes they're a little bit more than $3K. But in general, they're about $2,500. And the mediums are about twice that. And then the large are about twice that. And the extra large are about twice that. And typically, this is kind of the weeks. Obviously, if you did 10 hours a week, I mean, it's like, well, what? You can do 40 hours a week. But the reality here with the weeks is that you typically have a lot of back and forth and questions and things like that. So you can't really, we don't usually book out people 40 hours on a project because they get blocked. And so every person on the team is doing, a handful of projects at any given time. So that's why I have this week count here like this. It's just because project management, you can't, there's critical paths and there's blocks and things like that. So, and there's testing and development and there's project management. There's different roles on the team. And so that's basically it. In terms of ratios, I just took a look at our currently active projects. I did a count. We've got 43 active projects right now, and over 25 of them are small. And then we have, some like 5 or 10 mediums, and we've got a couple large actually right now. We've got 2 large. One's finishing, and we got 1 new one, and we've got one that's continuing, and no XLs. So that's kind of a quick kind of an idea. We do a lot of forms. We do about 40 projects a quarter, and this kind of gives you an idea. If you're creating a new form of if to cost it out, you need to do something quickly, you can use that information. Okay, so quick questions here. I think I'm just going to take a quick look at time here. We're just about done. Got some questions. Thank you very much for putting your questions in. Let's start with Greg. And it looks like we have 2 questions or 3 questions from Greg. Greg, as a current client, Greg is saying he can attest to what I'm saying. You guys have fantastic work. Thank you very much, Greg. You didn't have to say that, but we really appreciate the praise. And then a question here from you, InfoPath and approvals on handheld devices. You can do it with InfoPath Form Services. In terms of a rich client experience, we use Formotus as one of our partners. They're a little bit expensive depending on how you look at it. They actually could be cheaper than developing your own app if you have more than 3 or 4 forms in Formotus. They're cheaper. But yeah, we just use out of box. In fact, we did like 4 or 5 mobile forms last quarter. And one of them was for a company that goes off and does environmental things, and they're out in the field, and they're just filling it out using the browser. They have good connectivity. If you don't have good connectivity, of course, the thing's going to time out. The browser will, and you lose the data. So you have to be careful there. Yeah, so in general, if you have that issue, then you can install the rich client and use that instead, but that's not going to work on your handheld device. So great question there. And then you've got one more question here on ideas on how to have outside client signatures on an InfoPath form and submitted back to your company to be used in your company form. Yeah, so we did this webinar a couple years ago on external connections, and I believe it was, let me just go to the web page because it's out there and you can watch it. But the webinar was how to include let's just go to our list here. We got our list of webinars down here. And I want to say it was 2012. I want to say, here we go. No, that was not it. Well, this is one of them. Was kind of interesting, October 11th one, communicating with external users. But the one I'm thinking about was one that dealt with hubs. And, it might have been in 2011. But no, I guess we don't have 2011 up here. I need to ask my web admin about that. So where was it here? So it had to be, it had to be sometime in this time frame. I think what happened was we didn't do a webinar. We just recorded it. So if you go to our YouTube site, check sometime around October 2012, and search for hub. So we use 365 as a hub, connecting people with different accounts, and that might be relevant to the question you've got. Let me just go back to the question set here, and give me 1 second here. I lost my question dialog for some reason. So let's see if I can get this back up. Okay. Okay, now I have it up. Sorry about that. Okay, so and then feel free to reach out, Greg, if you got a question further. You can just contact me directly. Sandra has to run, and she says she's looking forward to 2015 webinars. Thank you very much, Sandra. And that's pretty much it. But let's talk about what we're doing next. We have four. Actually, we have some free stuff. So we are going to do a quick analysis of your form. I will do it, a review of one of your forms if you fill out the survey, so don't forget, we'd love your feedback. And then finally, what's happening this year, we have 4 webinars coming up. We're going to talk about how to query REST from 365 because it's kind of hard. You have to do some UDC changes. We're We're going to show you how to do faster browser forms. And by the way, this first one's really important if you're connecting to like an external like Salesforce, or you want to pull data into your form from one of those external providers and you've got a form online. This is really critical. The faster browser forms, common thing, people are having trouble with browser experience. My general rule is the form should open within 5 seconds, ideally less than 3, and they should submit less than 10. But when you're in the form, it should be like less than 1 second, significantly less than 1 second to tab around. Every once in a while you might have a calculation you run, and that can be, 2 to 3 seconds, but you shouldn't have your forms taking 10 seconds to open or 1 second between tabs. And we're going to talk about different ways to improve things, because guess what? You can always improve that. Some people may get frustrated, but there are lots of different techniques for improving your browser performance. We'll talk about that at the end of the month. We'll talk about, I want to do a shout out to Shane Harvey, who's got a great solution there. We're actually going to talk about 2 techniques that Shane, that you're using that kind of came to mind here in the last week. One of them is how to publish one form and have many subsites use it, which is very important if you've got a lot of subsites and different companies logging in or different users or customers to edit your data. You don't have to publish that XSN to every site. You can just do it to the master site. And then after that, we'll talk about how you can actually create Word documents and PDF forms from InfoPath using workflow. So anyway, feel free to schedule an hour with us if you want a consult, and we look forward to having you again next week. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.